The day I knew I didn't exist was the day our $3.2 million contract renewal went through, and during the town hall, Todd said, couldn't have done it without my guys. His guys being a half-bald Scrum lead who thought SSH was a band, a product manager who used ChatGPT to write Jira tickets, and the intern who still believed Postman was a delivery app. Meanwhile, I was the one in the server logs at 2:13 a.m., patching a permissions bug that would have borked the entire SSO pipeline if the client had refreshed at the wrong time. I was the one who rewrote the backend deployment script from scratch after their DevOps consultant ghosted us mid-rollout. But sure, Todd, clap for yourself. We'd all die without your Monday morning motivational quotes and microwaved egg whites. I didn't even flinch anymore. Just sipped my coffee, smiled, and went back to silently fixing the system that was duct taped together with hope, denial, and whatever I hadn't rage quit yet. People like me don't make speeches. We make systems work in spite of the speeches. That's probably why nobody noticed when I rewrote half the infrastructure using modular wrappers, or when I quietly ported the environment variables into my own CI/CD micropipeline with proper versioning and rollback, because the company didn't have the budget for real QA. And that's also probably why nobody asked questions when I signed my name at the bottom of a licensing header marked Copyright 2022, JH Systems LLC. Oh yeah, forgot to mention I own that LLC. Started it a year ago. Technically just a legal shell to handle small freelance gigs, but lately that shell had a pulse and a heartbeat, paying clients who addressed me as ma'am and architect, not sweetheart or ops girl. It all started with a single DM from a recruiter named Maya who wasn't peddling the usual growth mindset bootcamp startup trash. She wrote, "Hey, I'm not sure what your availability is like, but I'm staffing for a privacy-first productivity platform. The founding engineer rage quit after their seed round, and I think you could rebuild this better than he ever could. We pay well. You'd have architectural control. Interested?" I laughed so hard I startled the office Roomba. Architectural control? That was a foreign language around here, around Todd. But I didn't say no, not even close. While Todd was busy holding court over who'd bring bagels to stand up, I was on late-night Zooms with people who actually read changelogs. While my team played Slack emoji games, I was designing a pipeline that wouldn't crash every time Jenkins sneezed. I was building something clean, and this time mine, and real quick since you're already listening, I'll say this once and only once. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe. 90% of y'all don't, and honestly, it really helps the team keep these stories coming. Seriously, we don't have a bug bounty, just caffeine and chaos. Anyway, I was careful. Split workstations, separate keys. Never pushed side project commits from my main device. Masked IPs when needed. Every line I built for the side gig lived under a separate legal entity, JH Systems, and every clause in my main job's contract had been reviewed. Twice. I wasn't just moonlighting. I was moonwalking through loopholes with legal jazz hands. But someone had sniffed me out. It started small. My manager accidentally forgot to CC me on client comms I'd been running point on for weeks. HR started floating words like team alignment and focus drift in my check-ins. A director who'd never spoken to me before said, "You seem tired. Have you been burning the candle at both ends?" At first, I thought it was paranoia, that gnawing feeling that your keyboard clicks are being counted. But then I found a printout, yes, an actual printed email, on the edge of the printer tray. Subject line, policy review, conflict of interest guidance. My name was highlighted, in yellow. That's when I knew someone had snitched, or worse, someone upstairs realized they'd built their golden goose's nest out of rented twigs. I should have been scared. Instead, I felt something I hadn't tasted in 6 years working here. Amusement. Because the only thing more dangerous than a silent workhorse is one who knows exactly which screws hold your house together and has the wrench in her bag. Maya's client called themselves a privacy-first productivity suite, but what they really were was three engineers in hoodies, a sleep-deprived co-founder with a justice complex, and an idea that could gut Google Docs with a spoon if they got it right. They didn't want a rock star or a ninja or some startup mascot who could whiteboard loops with a Sharpie while quoting Steve Jobs. They needed an adult. A grown-up with battle scars and dark mode get logs longer than a CVS receipt. I didn't pitch myself. I didn't have to. They handed me the reins like they'd been waiting for someone with stable hands and middle-aged rage to finally show up and fix the plumbing. Their dev environment was a disaster. No test coverage, broken dependencies, and three branches named final, 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 and please merge. I spent 2 weekends cleaning it up and setting up a real pipeline. Maya called me after deployment and said, "I've never seen them this calm." I wasn't calm. I was alive. The kind of alive you feel when your brain stops grinding on corporate nonsense and starts building again. Clean logic, real modularity, not some duct tape spaghetti built on a 10-year-old Jenkins script and prayers to the CI gods. My system had sharp edges, rollback safety nets, and most importantly, a licensing wrapper tied to my LLC. Every function I wrote had a silent signature. Every tool I deployed belonged to me unless they bought it from me. No employment clause could touch it. I'd checked. Twice. Even ran it past a bored paralegal I found on Reddit for peace of mind. JH Systems LLC wasn't just a shell anymore. It was a shield. Meanwhile, back at the clown rodeo, things started getting weird. Todd, the kind of guy who thought Docker was that thing you used to hold fish, suddenly wanted to collaborate more deeply with me on documentation. Which is code for I think you're hiding something, so I'm gonna pretend to be interested in YAML. Then came the Slack messages. Hey Jennifer, saw your Git activity timestamp. Late night again? Eyes working hard or hardly working? Lol and my personal favorite from Brittany in HR, just checking in. We're trying to get a sense of everyone's work-life balance lately. Would you say you're more of an early bird or a night owl? I replied, more of a phoenix. They didn't get it. Then came the whispers. She seems distant, doesn't really come to happy hours. She logs off weird hours. As if fixing their broken infra at 3 a.m. made me suspicious. Not indispensable. Someone I still don't know who dug deep enough to connect the dots. JH Systems wasn't technically under my name, but the P.O. box address had shown up once before on a bug bounty payout from 3 years ago. And someone traced it, probably not out of malice, just boredom and male fragility. The day the CTO asked, hey, what's your relationship to JH Systems? I just blinked, slowly, like a cat processing its next kill. My what now? He smiled like he'd caught a fly with chopsticks. Just came across some licensed documentation while reviewing our SSO flow. The signature matched a digital cert on one of your earlier commits. I gave him the same answer I'd give a cop or traffic stop, calm, neutral, and just vague enough to be unhelpful. That sounds like something legal should clarify. He didn't push. He thought he'd won. What he didn't know is that everything he thought he owned, cleanest code base in their entire system, was technically on lease. Wrapped, annotated, controlled. My pipeline didn't just deploy, it monitored, it logged. And it could pull the plug with one command, but I wasn't vengeful, not yet. I was busy designing for the startup, for people who listened, who respected boundaries, who paid invoices on time. At my day job, I was just the quiet woman with a headset and an always muted mic during Zoom calls. At night, I was shaping a product people would use without cursing under their breath. The two worlds weren't supposed to meet, until a calendar invite popped up on a Tuesday at 4:27 p.m. Subject line, HR check-in 1-1, no context, no agenda. I stared at it for 3 full minutes, then slowly pushed my chair back and said aloud to no one, well, here we go. I walked into that HR meeting like a woman heading to her own execution, with a cardigan, a half-finished coffee, and the face of someone too tired to pretend anymore. Brittany from HR smiled at me like we were about to do a wellness check-in. She had that same breathy, performative tone she used during those corporate gratitude circles. Except this time, she wasn't holding a stress ball. She was holding a folder. Across the table sat Roger, the compliance officer whose greatest thrill in life was sending Slack messages that started with per my last email. He didn't smile. He didn't even blink. Just tapped his pen against the manila folder like it owed him rent. Brittany launched into her scripted little preamble. First, I just want to say how much we appreciate the time and energy you've given this team. Your work has been foundational. I nodded once. I'd heard this speech before. It always meant someone had a knife behind their back. Roger cut in. Jennifer, we've reviewed your Git history, IP usage, and commit signatures. We know you've been working 2 jobs, one of them under JH Systems LLC. You failed to disclose this conflict of interest, which violates your employment agreement under Section 3B, subsection 2. There it was, the lawyer cosplay. The pretend moment where they try to sound like they have teeth, when all they really have is a Wikipedia understanding of contract law and a misplaced sense of power. I blinked slowly. Interesting. Roger frowned. This is serious, is it? He leaned forward. You are required to surrender all code, documentation, and related IP associated with any project you worked on during your tenure here, immediately, or will be forced to escalate legally. I looked down at the folder. No timestamp. No printout of actual commits. Just vague accusations delivered with maximum confidence and zero precision. I took a breath, long and steady, like I was preparing to give birth to a lie I'd been gestating for 6 months. Sure, I said, smiling gently, of course. And that's when they made their second mistake. The first mistake was underestimating me. The second was assuming I was caught. They thought I'd run out of moves. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that every major system I built for them ran through a proprietary deployment wrapper I'd written under the legal structure of JH Systems. They hadn't bought it. They hadn't licensed it. They just used it, like people borrow a lighter and assume it's theirs now. Every function they'd leaned on, every interface that had made their bloated stack run like a Prius instead of a riding mower, it was bound by a licensing file. Tied not to me, Jennifer Heller, the employee, but to JH Systems, the vendor. A vendor they had never formally contracted with. A vendor who legally owed them nothing. The wrapper still in place, still connected to their infrastructure. Still very, very active, but not for long. That evening, while they high-fived in the HR war room and bragged about closing a loophole, I logged into the deployment server one last time from a remote shell. No drama, no fireworks, just a single, silent command. License revoked. My wrapper was designed for speed, sure, but more importantly for separation. At the pull of a single variable, the core info rekeyed itself. The ownership token shifted from valid to null, meaning their servers could still run but not deploy, not update, not authenticate. It was like handing someone a Ferrari with no gas and no key fob. They didn't know that yet, of course. They thought they'd won. Thought they'd caught the rogue dev red-handed and extracted their pound of flesh. I zipped the folder they gave me, filled it with harmless stubs, and uploaded it to their internal drive with a smile. Inside, nothing but scaffolding. No keys, no logic. Just blank templates with comments like function body redacted, pending license validation. I labeled the folder, per request immediate compliance zip, and then, for the first time in years, I logged out of the company's Slack with a kind of peace I hadn't felt since orientation day. I didn't look back, didn't say goodbye. They wanted the code, they got the shell. The soul of it, the part that breathed and pulsed and made their systems run like a dream that was never theirs to begin with, that belonged to me, and now it belonged to only me. I sent my resignation email at 7:42 a.m. on a Thursday. One line, no adjectives, no sentimental fluff. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position. Attached, a PDF that looked like a standard 2-week notice, but the effective date was that same morning. I knew HR would choke on that line. The timestamp alone would send Roger reaching for his policy binder like it was a life raft. I dropped my badge in a plain envelope, slid it under the office door, and walked out into the pale Ohio morning like I'd just buried something. Maybe I had, my patience, my silence, my illusion that this company deserved saving. At 9:03, Todd sent a Slack message to the entire dev channel. Please join me in wishing Jennifer the best in her future endeavors, followed by a party popper emoji and a gif of a dancing llama. I didn't even see it live. One of my few work friends texted me a screenshot with the caption, "He didn't even spell your last name right." Not surprised, I replied. He never spelled my code right either. By noon, HR had updated the org chart. My name vanished like a bad commit. The new line under DevOps read temp coverage TBD. Todd's next line in the team chat made me laugh loud enough to scare the neighbor's cat. She was never really a culture fit anyway. Culture fit. I'd been the one keeping their entire infrastructure from burning down. But sure, I didn't fit the culture of beer pong Slack emojis and Monday morning bro pep talks. While they were gossiping, I was busy conducting a full digital cremation. My local drive, wiped, verified, zeroed out. Every password manager entry exported to an encrypted USB I'd already shredded into two halves. Every doc, ticket, and draft I'd ever written, archived to cold storage under my LLC, where it legally belonged. And before anyone says paranoid, you don't spend 6 years watching directors misfile NDAs, leak staging credentials in emails, and share admin passwords in Google Sheets without learning to keep your house in order. When I logged into the system for the final time, I paused, just once. My cursor hovered over the Jenkins dashboard, the ugly, overworked heart of the company. They never appreciated how much blood I'd poured into that setup. It was like looking at a child you'd raised, knowing their next guardian was going to feed them glue. But I didn't leave a mess. I left it running perfectly. Every cron job intact. Every environment variable pristine. That's the trick of revenge done right. It doesn't start as chaos. It starts as calm. What they didn't realize was that one crucial license, one they'd taken for granted, wasn't in their name. It wasn't even in mine. It was in JH Systems Registry, a quiet line of code hidden deep in a dependency they never understood. Without that license, their system would run fine, until it needed to revalidate. And it would need to, soon. They assumed I'd walked away empty-handed. They assumed handing over all related code meant I'd surrendered my power. But the heartbeat of their system, that tiny validation ping that checked every 24 hours to confirm authorization, still called home. My home. As I logged out, I felt that eerie kind of peace that only comes when your fury has burned clean, no smoke, no sparks, just the quiet satisfaction of something inevitable ticking down. They would discover it in their own time. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But when they did, I wouldn't be there to explain it or fix it or save them. That's the beauty of a silent exit. No confrontation, no goodbye, just one small, missing line of code and a countdown they didn't even know had started. At exactly 7:58 a.m. the following Monday, the company homepage, usually cluttered with buzzwords like scalable cloud-native synergy and a hero image of a woman smiling at nothing in particular, vanished. Just gone, replaced with a full-screen white void and the quiet dread of nothingness. 3 minutes later, at 8:01, a single black line of text appeared, centered on the page like an obituary, property of my other employer. No font stylization, no link, just a cold, declarative sentence hanging in space like a noose. That's when the meltdown began. Phones started ringing before the marketing team even had time to refresh their browsers. The product lead, somewhere between a panic attack and a spreadsheet, fired off a message in the all-hands channel. "Anyone know what's going on with prod?" Todd replied with looking into it. "Might be DNS?" DNS, of course. His favorite scapegoat. The the digital boogeyman of clueless managers. By 8:05, Slack was on fire. Screenshots of the homepage were flooding every thread. Clients were emailing their reps asking if they'd been hacked. Sales couldn't demo. The CTO, who still thought YAML was a wellness brand, called for an emergency Zoom. From my end, the screen was far more peaceful. I was curled up on the couch in my apartment, chamomile tea in one hand, watching their digital empire stumble through its first real test without me. I hadn't built them to fail. I'd built them not to be stolen. That homepage wasn't down because of some petty attack. It wasn't hacked, breached, or ransomed. It was simply unlicensed. The proprietary wrapper I'd written, my deployment manager, my heartbeat tracker, my backend watchdog, still sat underneath their stack. Even after my so-called handover, it had remained untouched. Why? Because nobody in that office knew what it was. They saw the shell. They never understood the core. And at exactly 7:59:59, the call home function I'd embedded in version 2.3.6 did what it was designed to do. It pinged JH Systems LLC for license validation. The server received the updated flag. License revoked. Result, lockout. The render engine, dependent on my wrapper's confirmation key, couldn't resolve the home page. The system defaulted to a fallback state. Polite one-liner to tell the world that this machine no longer belonged to them. A heartbeat without a host. They could scream at legal all they wanted, dig through the code base, even roll back a deployment or two. But the core functions, those sweet, elegant little nodes that made everything run smoothly, still had their hands out, waiting for a license file that would never arrive. Todd messaged the dev channel again. Can someone just roll back to the pre-deployment version? Why are we locked out of staging too? One of the junior devs replied with a single emoji, a shrug. I nearly spit my tea. By 8:15, someone tried to reboot the environment manually. But my wrapper had hooks. Revalidation occurred on boot, not just per session. It was like trying to hotwire a Tesla with a coat hanger. The CTO finally chimed in at 8:23. Jennifer's code is still integrated with the live infra. Why didn't we isolate it? Silence, and then a response from legal. We were told she surrendered all IP and documentation. Another voice followed, one of the sysadmins who I'm pretty sure was 2 days away from quitting anyway. She did. It just wasn't theirs to begin with. That one sat in the Slack thread like a bullet casing. Meanwhile, at the startup, my other employer, the real one, was prepping for our 9 a.m. demo with an enterprise client. Same architecture, same features, same damn engine, but properly licensed, supported, and secured under my LLC's terms. I wasn't watching them crash out of bitterness. I didn't hate them. I just didn't care anymore. They had treated my silence like submission, my professionalism like passivity, my clean exits like admissions of guilt. They never asked why the system ran so well, why the outages stopped, why the deployment times dropped from 8 minutes to under 1. They just assumed someone else would keep doing it after I left. Now, all they had was a homepage that politely reminded them whose system they'd been leaning on and what happens when you pull the rug out from under the person holding the entire damn floor up. By 9 a.m., their executive team was in full-blown DEFCON mode, and I was logging into a new dashboard. Cleaner, faster, mine. The CTO, whose LinkedIn bio still listed thought leader as a core competency, was dragged into the boardroom by 9:17. They didn't even let him finish his Starbucks. One of the junior execs said he looked like someone had slapped him awake with a printout, probably because that's exactly what had happened. On the screen behind him, their homepage, still white, still broadcasting that lovely little phrase, property of my other employer. Next to that, screenshot of the licensing file, dated, timestamped, digitally signed with an active cert from JH Systems LLC. The board wasn't made up of engineers. These were people who thought containerization meant shipping logistics. So when the CTO babbled words like integration wrappers, private modules, and deployment tokens, they stared at him like he was speaking Swahili underwater. Start from the beginning, the CFO said, pinching the bridge of his nose. We own that code? The CTO blinked. Well, technically no, but we used it extensively, seamlessly. We integrated it. Integrated what? The deployment pipeline, auth systems, staging flows, the validation engine, the homepage renderer, also some backend tasks and billing. Silence. The general counsel leaned forward. And what exactly did we license? Pause. Well, nothing, not directly. It was just included. Included where? I mean, she deployed it. Under her employee credentials. She always did. It just worked. He said it like that was a defense. Like it just worked would undo the fact that their entire customer-facing infrastructure was humming on rented parts like a chop shop Tesla with a stolen battery. That's when legal clicked to the next slide. It was a copy of the licensing agreement Jennifer had filed through her LLC, tied to the proprietary wrapper. Clause in red, usage permitted under active contract only, non-transferable, invalid upon termination of contributing engineer or lapse in payment. No sublicense, replication, or reverse engineering without express written consent. Boardroom oxygen levels dropped like a stone. Then came the kicker. The compliance officer, who had been quietly scrolling through a second monitor, muttered, "We've triggered 3 automatic flags." Everyone turned to him. Unauthorized vendor usage, undocumented third-party integration, and failure to disclose subcontracted code base. Each one of those was a compliance-reportable event under their governance agreements with 2 of their biggest clients, both of whom had due diligence protocols on file. Meaning, mandatory disclosure, internal audit, potential clawbacks, possibly worse if this triggered a contractual breach. By 10:12 a.m., external counsel was looped in. By 10:24, the Slack thread hash incident response had 86 messages and counting, most of them some variation of "who let this happen?" The CTO, now sweating like a televangelist in a strip club, said, "Look, it's not like it was shady. Her side work was above board. Legit even. She used clean headers, maintained version control. The logs are pristine, better than ours." That last line did more damage than he realized. Better than ours. Because that's when the audit team finally opened the source repo and compared Jennifer's wrapper to their internal modules. Her commits, organized, commented, documented. Theirs, a digital landfill. What started as a witch hunt was turning into a confession booth, and the entire room was starting to realize they'd crucified the only person holding their house of cards together. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, I was finishing up a team call with my new employer. We're prepping for big onboarding week, 3 new clients, 2 pilots, and a rollout of our new user roles interface. My code, my system, all clean, all licensed, all legal. Maya pinged me mid-call, FYI, they're spiraling. My guy at compliance said your name just came up 6 times in one board meeting. I replied with a smile emoji and poured another cup of tea. They were finally realizing that I hadn't stolen a damn thing. I just built better, cleaner, smarter, and now it was all mine. While their system wheezed like a dying Roomba trying to boot without a charger. They wanted to see what chaos looked like without me? Congratulations. They just found out what it costs to pretend your MVP wasn't powered by a woman you wouldn't even promote. By noon, the boardroom air was thick with legal breath, dry, acidic, and full of implications. Outside counsel had arrived, sleeves rolled up, briefcases open like surgical kits. They weren't here to listen. They were here to carve the rod out. Brittany from HR had been called in 10 minutes earlier. She was still trying to pretend she was part of the solution, clutching a folder like it might shield her from liability. "Let's walk through this," the lead attorney said, tapping the table twice. "You terminated Miss Heller based on an assumed conflict of interest?" Brittany nodded too quickly. "Correct." He had reason to believe she was working outside her employment terms. "Moonlighting. And upon termination, did you collect a signed IP transfer, an affidavit of assignment, or confirm ownership of any code, documentation, or tooling used in production systems?" Brittany blinked. We had her submit her code. Submit it where? Our internal SharePoint. She uploaded a folder labeled per request immediate compliance. Legal team had already reviewed that folder. Inside, placeholders, empty functions, and a readme TXT that read like a ransom note written by someone who wanted to get sued but couldn't be touched. The lawyer leaned back and exhaled through his nose. "You didn't get squat. You got a brick wrapped in tinfoil." Roger from compliance chimed in, defensive. "But she worked here, on company time. Anything she built belongs to us under the standard work-for-hire clause." Attorney clicked to a new slide. It was a terminal log, a commit entry. Signed, JH at JH Systems ZO fingerprint, matched to a registered certificate under JH Systems LLC. Metadata, uploaded from a separate subnet. Date, 3 days after her employment contract had been signed, but weeks before the wrapper went into deployment. In short, the attorney said, folding his hands, she didn't build your system. She licensed it to you. You voided that license when you terminated her without acquisition, assignment, or even basic counsel review. A silence settled over the room like fog rolling in over a landfill. The CEO was pale. Todd had gone quiet. The CTO looked like he wanted to crawl into Jenkins and shut the door. The lawyer continued, voice even colder. You merged her system into production, built features on top of it, scaled using it, sold functionality derived from it, without ever having the rights to do so. Then the final knife. And you fired her under the assumption that she was replaceable. Todd coughed. "Well, we didn't need her full-time. She's not an employee," the lawyer snapped. "She's a vendor, and you've breached every standard clause of third-party usage." Roger, now sweating, whispered, "Can we roll it back?" "Use a backup, you can try," came the reply. "But backups still reference her wrapper as the base layer. If you remove it, your system reverts to static templates and hard-coded flows. Basically, a glorified demo." And just like that, the full weight of their mistake became visible, an iceberg rising from beneath their product line, cold and massive and absolutely unmovable. The CFO finally asked the question no one wanted to say aloud. "What will it take to fix this?" Silence. Then, from the junior compliance analyst in the corner, a soft voice, "We can't. Not without her." That was the moment the finger-pointing started. Why didn't legal vet the deployment architecture? She never should have been allowed to commit directly to prod. I thought you were handling her offboarding. She used company time, you cut her loose before confirming the license. HR, legal, engineering, all turning on each other like rats on a sinking barge. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed. It was Maya again. Guess who just reached out for meeting request? I didn't reply immediately. I watched the Slack pings pile up like snow. The panic, the guilt, the slow realization that no one had checked who actually owned the heart of their system. They didn't just lose an engineer, they lost the owner of their entire operational backbone. And now every recovery path led through one door. Mine. At 1:17 p.m., my old company sent the first email. Not from legal, not from Todd, he wouldn't dare. But from a senior director I'd only ever seen during quarterly pep talks, where he read from cue cards like a hostage blinking in Morse code. Subject line, critical support request urgent assistance required message body, polite, respectful even, the digital equivalent of bending the knee. They tried to frame it like a collaborative opportunity. They were reevaluating vendor relationships and would love to open a dialogue about potential short-term advisory engagements related to legacy systems you may have familiarity with. Legacy systems? Cute, I didn't reply. My assistant did. That's right, I have an assistant now. Her name's Camille, former tech recruiter, hyper-organized, fearless. She screens everything that hits my inbox, even when the sender's name is bolded and panicked. Her reply was short, professional and nuclear. Thank you for your inquiry. Jennifer Heller is currently available for consulting via JH Systems LLC. Please find our standard rate sheet attached. Payment terms, $1,400/HR, invoiced in advance. Minimum 20-hour engagement. For urgent support within 48 hours, rush fees apply. Attached was a PDF titled 2024 Rates JH Systems Full Service PDF. The file had no fluff. No blurbs, just line items and pricing. Cold, clean numbers. They needed me, but I didn't need them. Their product was choking on its own dependencies. Their clients were already asking questions. Two were requesting root access to verify data integrity, and their CTO had no way to respond without triggering more violations. So they emailed again, then again, 3 times in 20 minutes. Camille filtered them into a folder titled Desperation. Then came the call, blocked number, left a voicemail. Jennifer, hey, it's Todd. Look, things got sideways. You know how it is. We're all under pressure. Just wanted to see if we could hop on a quick Zoom, talk things out. Maybe find a win-win? I didn't delete it. I forwarded it to Camille. She replied on my behalf with another PDF. This one titled JH Systems Vendor Terms V5. PDF, it outlined the conditions for vendor engagement. No calls outside pre-scheduled blocks, all communications through official channels. Prepayment required, no guarantees of resolution timelines unless under retainer, non-compete clause waived due to conflict with existing client, named clearly in clause 3.2, their largest competitor, that last one? That's the gut punch, because while they were figuring out how to breathe without their wrapper, I was deploying version 2.0, the same underlying infrastructure, but cleaner, smarter, and fully under license, directly to their direct rival. That deal had been signed Friday. I didn't even pitch them, they came to me. Camille's final line in the email was surgical. Due to existing contractual obligations, support availability is limited and not guaranteed. Should you wish to proceed, please confirm acknowledgement of attached terms. Best regards. They didn't respond, not right away. I could almost hear the boardroom, smell the stale coffee and rising panic. The CFO asking, what do we pay her now if she's not an employee? The CEO muttering about optics. Todd, somewhere in the corner, trying to disappear into his hoodie. See, this wasn't about revenge. I wasn't angry. I was incorporated. They'd reduced me to a head count, a Slack icon, a muted voice. Now I was a line item. And for the first time in 6 years, I was being billed at what I was actually worth. They wanted my help. They could pay the vendor rate, because that's all I was to them. And now, that's all they were to me. The final scene didn't happen in a courtroom or a dramatic Zoom call with someone yelling you're making a mistake. No, it happened in the most corporate way imaginable, during a beige-carpeted emergency meeting with too many people and not enough air. The CEO walked in late, coffee in hand, shirt collar crumpled, and that look of someone who still thought money could fix this if you just threw enough of it fast enough. He didn't greet anyone, didn't sit. Just marched up to the screen at the head of the table and barked, show me the site. The IT lead nervously tapped a few keys and hit refresh. Still there, property of my other employer. Plain, unblinking, eternal. The CEO squinted at it like his eyes were broken. Why the hell is this still here? Legal didn't speak at first. Just looked at the general counsel, who exhaled long enough to fog a mirror, then said, because we don't own it. Silence. He continued slowly, like each word cost him blood. We're operating under a time-bound license from JH Systems LLC, Jennifer's LLC. The code base, the wrapper, the auth modules, the deployment engine, it was never actually assigned to the company. We used it under a renewable implicit license based on her employment and active contributions. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. Legal nodded grimly, and we terminated her, which terminated the license. The CEO blinked, then blinked again, and his hand started to shake. The coffee hit the floor, not dropped, not spilled, just let go. It landed like a gunshot. The room flinched. Hot liquid spread across the carpet in a slow, guilty stain. Nobody moved to clean it. The CTO, red in the face, tried to salvage something anything. We can still fix this. Bring her in, offer double, maybe even equity, but legal was already shaking their head. No dice. We reached out through counsel. She's under retainer with one of our direct competitors. Her calendar is locked until Q4, and even if we could get her, we'd be licensing back the same system we tried to steal. That word hung in the room like a corpse on a meat hook. Steal. No one argued because they all knew. Deep down, in the marrow of their shame, they had tried to steal it. They'd fired the architect and assumed the bricks would stack themselves. Back at my apartment, it was a different kind of meeting. Me, my new team, and 3 enterprise clients on a Zoom call. We were launching version 2.0. Same core framework, cleaned up, rebuilt, legally mine. We'd stripped the old skin, rebranded the modules, optimized the hooks. Everything ran lean, everything ran fast, everything just worked. I didn't give a speech, didn't gloat, didn't even mention my former employer. We just hit deploy. One click. Seconds later, the screen filled with our new dashboard. Sleek UI, branded login, smooth performance metrics ticking up like a heartbeat freshly unchained. The new logo flickered in the corner. JH Systems build what they said you couldn't. I sat back in my chair, watching the numbers climb, and thought about that line still sitting on their broken homepage. No flourish, no threat, just a reminder of the one truth they couldn't bury under policy or spin. Property of my other employer. No comeback speech. No applause. Just coffee on the floor, and the quiet sound of me moving on. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.